First, I would like to get your reaction to the Twitter report, because
nice to see you today.
My understanding of this, right, 200 Twitter accounts, suspected, unproven at this stage, links to Russia. They are accused of all things, and I think this is the lowest thing I've ever heard, violating the ban on spam. The ban on spam, surely that is holy, that is sacred, Ron. Is that proof of election meddling?
No, absolutely not. And I think they're just on a witch hunt. Sometimes I think the dedication of the senators, several at least, that are involved in this, is to undermine our First Amendment. You know, most of the time you could look at some of this stuff that's going around, and I think it's all coming from sore losers. You could just say, well, why don't you protect prior restraint, this idea that you can't allow people to say things or do things. But I think it's a witch hunt. I think that they don't care about what Hillary was doing, and they're very biased against the Trump campaign. And I think that's where the real problem is. And I think the Senate has a job to do. I think our government has a job to do, and they're trying to avoid it because they don't even talk about it. I would like our government to talk about our involvement in campaigns, most recently in Ukraine. You know, we participated in a coup, and that to me sounds like a more serious offense than tinkering with Twitter accounts and trying to figure out who placed the ads. So far, they haven't showed me an ad that was a pro-Trump ad that was paid for by the Russian government. I mean, that seems to be, you know, if there were thousands and thousands of ads paid by the Russian government and it was blatantly pro-Trump, you know, you say, well, maybe they shouldn't do that and they're involved, but we know about it. But I still think the serious thing that we have more responsibility for is to know what our government does getting involved in other elections.
Well, I want to know is, what have my employers been doing, Ron? What has RT done? Surely no smoke without fire. Do I need to look for a new job? If they've done something wrong, I want to know.
Well, that's hard to say, because I don't think justice is necessarily that thing that blossoms, no matter under what system of government. It just seems like there's so much bias in the justice system that I thought it would be better with more outlets and the internet to counteract some of this, but it looks like sometimes this backfires and they actually end up using the internet to try to stir up more trouble. But just the ultimate consequence of this, I can't predict this, but I do think that it's totally biased, and I do think that there should be more attention with this administration to look at what the Hillary campaign is doing, just to distract from the one-sidedness of what's going on. But I really believe that whether it's the Hillary campaign or the Trump campaign and the alleged Russian interference, I consider this rather minor compared to some of the problems we face in this country. I'm much more interested in our relationship with Russia and how we deal with Syria, and when we're going to accept our libertarian viewpoint that we ought to start coming home from those kind of places and stay out of everybody's election. But you know, to seek out justice here is a real challenge. But quite frankly, I don't have the sensation that, boy, this is a big deal. You know, if we don't find out exactly what those Russians did to our elections, you know, the end of the world is coming. I think that's a bit of fear-mongering.
When I look at the numbers, though, Ron, it's a bit worrying. I am concerned that maybe the Russian government bought the US election. Maybe RT did it itself, because there's a whole $100,000 was spent on Facebook ads and up to 200 accounts on Twitter. I mean, that sounds substantial. Could that sway an election?
Well, hardly. I wouldn't think it will. I don't recall anything I saw or heard during the campaign that would have entered into my mind. So no, that seems like a small amount compared to the billions that are spent here in campaigns and what's done behind the scenes. I think, and actually the money isn't the whole thing as much as who controls the media. I think Trump gave the conventional media a little bit of grief because he was able to use Twitter accounts and counteract, you know, this monopoly in our media that portrays, anybody that doesn't fit the mold of the establishment as something that we have to stop. So I think that the money spent, that they're saying has spent, doesn't seem to be anything in comparison to the control of the media, the control of the deep state, and the control of the billions of dollars that was spent on both sides. And also, there were a lot of dollars that involved the Clinton campaign that has not been resolved. And I think some of the House committees are sort of looking at that, but I don't think that's likely to, bear much fruit.
Maybe this is an opportunity for the USA to follow the example set by China by controlling its internet, protecting the country by perhaps cutting off websites like Reddit or the Drudge Report, which is being claimed should be probed also for alleged interference in the elections and for links to Russia. Should this happen, do you think, Ron?
Well, this is horrible. This was what I sort of mentioned earlier on. These senators and individuals who are suggesting this are working hard to undermine our First Amendment. They want to interfere with that. What is their allegations? Is CNN equivalent to what Reddit is? And CNN has access to other countries, and they do things similar to Russia Today. They're involved in other countries, and so I think that to close people down, matter of fact, the Ron Paul Liberty Report has been mentioned, as somebody participating. And there are some days that we're very concerned about what's happening, instead of honoring and respecting what has been an American tradition of protecting the First Amendment. A lot of people in this country don't fully understand or care about the First Amendment. They want to control it. And if they don't like what you're saying, they'd like to close us down. And so I consider that a very serious problem.
I'm sorry to sully this conversation now. So far we've managed to go proof-free, but I'm now going to introduce something that some people might consider to be some form of evidence. WikiLeaks has published an actual email coming from Hillary Clinton's campaign chief, and it mentions a Facebook top official offering to help the Clinton bid. A lot of people might be confused by that. That is apparently a real piece of evidence. What should we make of that? Should it be investigated?
Well, obviously it should be. I don't think I know of any media stations in the United States that's going to pick up on it and talk about it incessantly. I'm not even sure if the leadership of the Republican Party will follow up. Trump has made some statements where he'd back off on the prosecution of some of the wrongdoing which has been suspected, but it deserves an investigation, if nothing for no other reason than to try to neutralize the bias that we find in our media constantly.
I'm just reading some information just come through now saying that the CIA is running an ad on Twitter. This is what I'm being told now. They're looking to hire Russian-speaking people. The ad says you can discover the truth as a CIA agent. So the CIA trying to hire Russian speakers, presumably native Russians originally, to work for them. What's your impression of that?
Well, I don't have much respect for the CIA. On principle, the libertarians are very annoyed with and the very existence of the CIA. But spy agencies have been around for a long time in just about every country. And I think one can find out what's going on in other countries without having a secret government. That's what I don't like. I don't like our CIA being involved in affairs that the Congress has no knowledge about. The fact that they're out looking for employees, that disturbs me, but most of what the CIA does disturbs me anyway.
I'm trying to make some sense of what appears to be a world of madness around us. So the nub of the story today about RT was that RT has done something wrong by paying for adverts on social media to advertise its company. And something is wrong with that, apparently. Is this not the same thing, though, that the US government is doing? It's advertising the belief that Russia has done something wrong, whether it's doping its athletes at a government level, whether it's trying to infiltrate US security systems through hacking, whether it's trying to fix the US elections. Is that not just a form of advertising? You send out a message and you repeat, but there's no proof.
Yeah, and I think this is what happens when empires feel that they're challenged. They have to be very determined, to control the information. So I think that is a major problem and I think it will continue to exist. But the average American is not too much aware of this. They look at the political sides of this. But I do think that their effort is to close us down, and to not allow us to speak out. And they are attacking our First Amendment. And if they look at Radio Free America, I think that was directed toward trying to influence other countries. And I think they're still around. And like programs like that, we have been involved. And our CIA has been very much involved in internal affairs of elections. And I think that's what we as Americans should be concerned about. I can't understand everything that is being accused and going on. I just see what's happening in this post-election period as a result of a bunch of sore losers that were shocked that they didn't win the election, and now they're out there to sort of go after a witch hunt. But I think that the responsibility for us ought to be is what has our government done? Has our government been involved after they're in power? And unfortunately, we're involved too much around the world.
Ron, I just want to finally talk to you about one thing that particularly concerns me, and it's facts or a lack of facts. And you'll know this from your experience. If you go into a court of law and you make an accusation against somebody, a serious one, and you provide absolutely no evidence, it will be laughed out of court, and it will be embarrassing for those making those claims. What we see on a political level, though, are serious accusations and attempts to even shut down broadcasters or social media sites or websites without any evidence being produced, and yet there is no repercussion, it seems. Does something need to change? Because it's a very dangerous weapon.
Yeah, you're right about that. If it's extreme, it'll be thrown out of court. Unfortunately, some get through, and they still go into the court because the judicial system can be very, very biased. But when you're tried and prosecuted by the media, you can destroy people's lives, and you can be found eventually somebody that has the money that can fight it. They might be able to win a court case if they sue somebody. But many people who either go bankrupt or their reputations are destroyed. So it's done by people who have an agenda. And the basic flaw is what I said. They do not want free expression. And that, of course, is what we should be protecting, because that, for individuals like myself, that's the only thing we have, is the ability to speak out. And the internet has been helpful. But others, who they claim have a greater influence, they're being challenged, and they are being closed down. And that's exactly what's going on in the Senate today, is people are trying to investigate and then close people down and challenge people who are, not committing any crime, but they are, involved in selling ads. And until I get proof that the selling of the ads was some type of a sinister approach to destroy our country, I think you always give people the benefit of the doubt on what they're advertising.
And I don't think the irony will be lost on people. The CIA apparently advertising on Twitter to mobilize Russian speakers, presumably to spy against their own country. Irony, that is the word. And presumably it's okay because it's all in the name of freedom and democracy. Ron, it's been great to speak to you as always.